Object-oriented programming diagrams. First is activity diagram. Activity diagram is another important diagram in UML to describe the dynamic aspects of the system. Activity diagram is basically a flowchart to represent the flow from one activity to another activity. The activity can be described as an operation of the system. The control flow is drawn from one operation to another. The purpose of activity diagram is similar to other diagrams. It captures the dynamic behavior of the system. Other diagrams are used to show the message flow from one object to another, but activity diagram is used to show message flow from one activity to another. So I have here an example of activity diagram. So as you can see, my example here is a order management system. So next is use case diagram or case diagram. Only static behavior is not sufficient to model a system, rather dynamic behavior is more important than static behavior. In UML, there are 5 diagrams available to model the dynamic nature, and use case diagram is one of them. Now, as we have to discuss that the use case diagram is dynamic in nature, there should be some internal or external factors for making the interaction. These internal and external agents are known as actors. Use case diagram consists of actors, uses cases and their relationship. The diagram is used to model the system or subsystem of an application. A single use case diagram captures a particular functionality of system. Hence, to model the entire system, a number of use case diagrams are used. Purpose of use case diagram. The purpose of use case diagram is to capture the dynamic aspect of a system. However, this definition is too generic to describe the purpose. As other 4 diagrams or activity sequence, collaboration, and state chart also have the same purpose, we will look into some specific purpose which will distinguish it from other 4 diagrams. Here's some example of case diagram. So the actor there is the customer. Next is interaction overview diagram. Interaction overview diagram define interaction through a variant of activity diagram in a way that promotes overview of the control flow. Interaction overview diagrams focus on the overview of the flow of control where the nodes are interactions or interaction uses. The lifelines and the message do not appear at this overview level. The interaction overview diagram focuses on the overview of the flow of control of the interactions. It is a variant of the activity diagram where the nodes are the interaction or interaction occurrences. The interaction overview diagram describes the interaction where messages and lifelines are hidden. So, here are example of overview diagram. Interaction overview diagram, sorry. So, next is state machine UML diagram or state machine diagram. UML state machine, also known as UML state chart, is a significantly enhanced realization of the mathematical concept of finite automaton in computer science applications as expressed in the Unified Model Language or UML notation. The purpose of state machine UML diagram is to organize the way a device or computer program or other often technical process works such that an entity or each of its sub-entities is always in exactly one of number of possible states and where there are well-defined conditional transition between these states. So here's some example of state machine UML diagram. So sequence UML diagram. A sequence diagram simply depicts interaction between objects in a sequential order, in other words, the order in which this interaction take place. We can also use the terms event diagrams or event scenarios to refer to a sequence diagram. Sequence diagrams describe how and in what order the objects in a system function. These diagrams are widely used by businessmen and software developers to document and understand requirements for new and existing systems. Purpose of sequence diagram. A sequence diagram shows object interaction arranged in time sequence. It depicts the objects involved in the scenario and the sequence of messages exchanged between the objects needed to carry out the functionality of the scenario. So, here's the example of sequence diagram. Next is class diagram. Class diagram is a static diagram. It represents the static view of an application. Class diagram is not only used for visualizing, describing, and documenting different aspects of a system, but also of constructing executable code of the software application. Class diagram describes the attributes and operation of a class and also the constraints imposed on the system. The class diagrams are widely used in modeling of object-oriented systems because they are the only UML diagrams which can be mapped directly in object-oriented language. Class diagram shows a collection of classes, interfaces, association, collaboration, and constraints in. It is also known as a structural diagram. Class diagram. The purpose of class diagram is to model the static view of an application. Class diagrams are the only diagrams which can be directly mapped with object-oriented languages and thus widely used at the time of construction. Here's a sample of class diagram. So, object diagram. Object diagram are derived from class diagram. So, object diagrams are dependent upon class diagrams. Object diagrams represent an instance of a class diagram. Purpose of object diagrams. The purpose of a diagram should be understood clearly to implement it is practically. The purposes of object diagrams are similar to class diagrams. The difference is that the class diagram represents an abstract model consisting of classes and their relationship. However, an object diagram represents an instance at a particular moment, which is concrete in nature. Here is the example of object diagram. Component diagram. Component diagrams are different in terms. Component diagrams are used to model the physical aspect of system. The purpose of component diagram is a special kind of diagram in UML. The purpose is also different from all other diagrams discussed so far. It does not describe the functionality of the system, but it describes the components used to make those functionalities. Here's some example of component diagram. That's all. Thank you.